What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream, where tonight it's all about DIY. And one of the other more creative guys I know out there is Mr. Mark Levinson from Milo's Reef. How you doing today?
Hello, everyone.
How's
I'm
things?
doing okay.
Yeah?
I'm ready to talk about things that we do ourselves.
Excellent. So, two big reasons for DIY. One, you're trying to build something cool that doesn't exist, or you need something custom, or you just want to save some cash and make your own version of it. So there's a lot of different reasons for DIY. I love creating things, so love it. Thank you on the sunglasses. We're matchy today. But
We have to.
yeah, exactly. So speaking of glasses, I don't have a phone filter for your camera. Glasses, super easy little DIY lens. Pop your phone through it and get good photos. So there's tons of good reasons for going the whole DIY route. But now, actually, before the stream started, someone actually was asking about 3D printing, and can we talk about it a little bit? So quickly touch on that one. So 3D printing is awesome. You can make all kinds of stuff that's either, most of the time, stuff that I make is like mounting or clips or different things because it just doesn't exist for a product for it, right? So it's solving my own random little issues. Or those things that are just too complicated to injection mold. Like I just saw VCA on the stream, and like you could not injection mold that crazy little spiral and stuff inside of things. Like there's certain things that aren't feasible. So 3D printing has a lot of big advantages. One question I get asked constantly is, what kind of filament do you use? And if it's something that's outside of the tank, I'll generally use PLA just because it's really easy to print with. And that's for stuff more like mounts, which I had some on my desk earlier. Like for instance, this is just a little one I busted up the other day, is like a cable clip. So all my wires from my Radeon, I can just put this in my extruded aluminum bar, twist it over, and now it holds the wires out of the way. And I don't see wires dangling down, right? So it just cleans up stuff.
That was cool.
Yeah, it's super easy. Just pop it in and twist it, and it locks in. And holds
I didn't know that. I saw the one you made the other day that I thought was different.
Yep.
It went around, but I thought it was like a D shape or something.
Yep. I don't know if I have any of my little prototypes on the desk. I probably got rid of them. But yeah, so that one clips on the bar. So there's a little tiny groove on the top and bottom of the bar. That one clips on it. So that one's very low profile to keep the wires snug against the bar. Where this one's cool for the vertical one, just to take that group of wires and so they're not hanging out. So it hides them. And then like just stupid little things like on the back of my controller board, I just made these little rings to hold dosing bottles. So I'm trying out a couple of those little KZ products. So I mounted them on the back side of my display panel. And I don't want them to fall out if I move something, so then I pop in a single little screw or glue it or whatever, and the bottle sits in there, and I don't have to worry about tipping over. So it's just useful for lots of little DIY things.
Yeah.
Now, if it's something going inside of the tank, then I'll usually want to use like ABS or PETG. So PLA will break down over time. I don't know if there's any harm in it, but it will deteriorate over time in saltwater, or PETG or ABS won't. Now, Mark, if it was you, I'm sure you'd bust out something out of acrylic for it because you are definitely the master of acrylic there.
That's true. There are so many things over. I can't, it's so funny when people say, well, what have you made or whatever? I always have a hard time remembering. But over the last 20 years, I would say I want such and such. I'll just make it out of acrylic.
Yeah.
And I've done it so many times. I mean, things in different rooms of the house. I was like, I just need a thing. And I'll make that device, and it'll end up being great. I remember one time my son wanted a way to hang our PlayStation controllers or Xbox controllers on the wall. Made a little bracket, and it hung on the wall, and we put both our controllers. We were very proud of this little silly piece of acrylic that I made.
Nice.
But nowadays you can buy, like you said, things that have been extruded or what'd you call it?
Casted or extruded or molded.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
There's a thing where yes. And so a lot of that stuff's available these days and it's cheap. But when you can just make something yourself on the spot with the things you have in your house, that's always a win. Especially if you can do everything from what you have in your house without a trip to Home Depot first.
100%. Like the video I posted on Monday 2 days ago about like my big giant gravel vac cleaner thing, I legitimately could not find my gravel vac, and I was like, oh, I gotta go buy one. I'm like, like I think I could make one of these. Like I had to go buy tubing, but like this is like extreme gravel vac edition. But
yeah, that tube was massive. I was looking at it. I even went to your link, and
dude,
I think it's like 2 1/4 inches wide or something.
This
and
yeah. But it works so
most
well.
gravel vacs are thinner, the
They are.
diameter.
But the thing is, you just go bloop in like a big tank. You can clean it in no time. But I'm actually gonna 3D print like a little adapter, I think, for this and try and make something cleaner instead of using all these parts. That'll be the next little project. But like just.
And then would you glue it or silicone it to the tube?
Yeah, either one. Wouldn't really matter. Just something so it doesn't leak.
No, it has to matter because it won't keep a siphon if it doesn't.
No, that's
so
right.
It's got to be something good on the end.
I
And
would
that's why I
probably
was
just
wondering what material works with PLA or whatever. You know, I don't know what is
I
that a cyanoacrylate thing? Is that a silicone thing?
I would just use probably super glue gel. Just do a big ring around it and slide it on, then do another ring around to the bottom of it, and I think you'd be solid.
Okay.
But like that thing surprised me how well that worked for just stuff I had laying around the house. I had ordered the filters obviously because I didn't have 50 micron filters laying around. But aside from that, it was good.
No,
Uh,
I thought that was a great idea. I enjoyed that video. It
Thank
was
you.
fun. I was looking at your situation and how you did it, and you know, because I was thinking, well, why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah,
Because I mean, I sell RODI systems. I have the housings too, but
you have all the
it's like,
parts.
no, I would never do that. I would literally set up a nice 7-inch sock somewhere, like in my modular sock box,
Yeah.
and I would set that in my sump. I would run my tubing into that sock. I would
Hmm.
clip it somehow so it would stay in place, so I knew it wouldn't flop out. And I have these 10 microns. As a matter of fact, I'm getting 5 micron socks shipped to me next. Five
Yeah.
microns. It's nothing.
Didn't know they made it that small
I
or
well,
big.
that's the thing. I'm trying to
Yeah.
order 10 micron. Like, all we have is 5. I'm like, fine, send me 5s. So that's coming
Yeah.
here. And then, but the thing is, like in my tank, and I noticed in
Mhm.
yours as well, there's a lot of corals in the way on the sand bed.
Yes, there is for
So
sure.
you need a place to move those corals. And when I saw that, I thought of my little work tray, which is
Hmm.
something I came up, I don't know, a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And I was like, I want a tray that I can set above my tank with holes in the bottom.
Hmm.
So I can take something out of the tank and put it in the tray and it can just drip and the water stays in the system.
Yeah.
And I just thought this would be really cool. But how do I make it where it fits any tank? And I made it where you can just cut PVC pipes the right length to fit your own aquarium,
Hmm.
slide them through the holes, and top.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted that tray to be underwater for your situation where
Hmm.
you've got all these corals you're moving temporarily out of the way, yet you want to keep them underwater. And so I thought you could do the same thing with PVC and elbows and kind of make like this extension going down. And that way you could lower the tray down inside the reef tank underwater.
That'd be cool. I like it.
And
It's
as long as it's out of your way so you can work, that's what matters. You
oh
know,
exactly. I'm just picking it up, throwing it down the sound bed, moving it around. But yeah, that would be like awesome in that situation. So that was pretty cool actually. When you sent me a photo of that, I was like, hmm.
you're like, I can print that.
It's easier if you just build me one.
Yeah, no, actually, I've got the pieces cut out to build you one. So it's going to happen, whether you like it or not. I'll just send you an invoice later today.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. But it is definitely, I don't know. You just build so much cool stuff. Like there's no reason not to do it. One day I do want a CNC machine or a laser cutter though. It'd be awesome.
All right, let me ask you this, because I know you're trying to interview, but I'm going to interview you back. What is the coolest of all the things you've DIY'd, the one thing that's most memorable to you? And then I'll tell you mine.
Probably one of my most popular ones is my Voss water bottle dosing container slash holder thing. And I get asked about that a bazillion times. Like one day I need to like rebuild that file because I get asked almost weekly, do you still have that file? Because my computer died. But like, if I know,
Backup.
Right.
Everything gets backed up.
Now I have a big NAS and stuff. But like, okay, DIYing a dosing container is one of the easiest things you could do. You can go buy fancy ones that spend a fortune, or you can buy these little bulkheads and like little space saver containers, drill a hole in it, make a little dosing container. Like that's my waste container for the reef pot. It was under my desk, so it's easy to grab. But it's so easy to do that. Or like just walking through the dollar stores, like the best place to find ideas. You're like, that's a nice pasta jar. That'd make a great dosing container, right? Like there's this, you can do it so cheap if you just have a little bit of creativity and you have that mindset as you're wandering of like, oh, what can I build? So it's kind of good.
Yeah. Well, you're going to need one of these to back up all your work in the future, okay? It's called a thumb drive, and they're awesome. Everything that I've programmed on Minion in the last 3 years is on this thumb drive, and I update it every 2 months. Well, I don't know how you lost your file then.
My computer died. It was on it. It all just died.
All right, so the weirdest thing I ever made
What is it?
that was completely DIY was a way to dose vodka in my aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted, because I was putting it in daily. I had a syringe, I drew up some vodka, I trickled it in. And when I traveled, there was no vodka dosing. And the thing about vodka dosing was you had to dose it every single day, and you can't skip a day,
Mm-hmm.
and it had to be a certain amount. And I was like, I want to rig this up, and this was before we had dosing pumps. You know, it wasn't even an option. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to make an acrylic tray that holds this. It was a big plastic test tube. It held, I don't know, 60, 70 milliliters of solution. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
But that meant it would only hold a little bit of vodka. If the thing went wrong, it could only put in 60 milliliters. It wouldn't dump a 2-liter bottle of vodka into my reef. And then I got a mechanical, well, I guess it wasn't mechanical. I got a digital timer that you could time things to the second.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an aqua lifter. And I put
Nice.
this whole thing together. and it would activate the aqua lifter for like 93 seconds. And that
Hmm.
was just enough time to pull out the 15 milliliters I needed per day and trickle it into my sump to go in my reef. And I had this little thing, and I'd refill the test tube like once every 4 or 5 days. And that was my automated DIY dosing system.
That's hardcore. I didn't know there was a time before dosing pumps. I like it though. Aqua lifters are great for so many things, you know, like auto top offs, you know, even dosing. Like for a $20 pump, you can do a lot with them.
Are
Speaking,
they 20 bucks now? Man, those things used to be like $9 or
oh yeah,
$11.
yeah, well in Canada they're like 20 something.
Okay.
They're probably cheaper. They're probably free in the States. Everything's free out
They're
there.
probably free.
um, some other cool ones are just like a little dosing pump that I made. Like, so this one would just sit in top of like a 5 gallon jug, and this little contain just like a cheap little $10 dosing pump, and
Yeah.
connected to a little optical switch that would just sit there, and as it loses water, it just turns it on for a few seconds and tops it off. So I had that in my little nano tank. So super tiny little ones that did, which work
And
pretty
you
well.
printed the frame that holds it all together? Is
Yep.
that what you are showing us?
Yep. There's just like there's
That's
a
fancy.
yeah, there's a very super tiny little basic circuit in there, and then the rest is just my little plugs and switches and stuff.
And
But
how do you keep all that stuff dry?
this sat on top of the jug. It was the jug and it had that little circle in the middle, so I made this fit in the circle. Actually, I think my buddy
Oh,
made this housing and I stole it off
that
him
is
and
so
then
okay. I
made
thought
my
you
own
printed
circuit.
the house. And I'm like,
Yeah,
holy crap, the thing is amazing.
yeah, it's 3D printed.
Okay,
You
yeah.
can kind of see the little grooves in it, but yeah, it's printed.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's really cool. No, I hadn't seen that. I guess I missed a video.
it happens. It happens. I do a lot. But yeah, so many things, or even just like siphon breaks. That's another one I see people always get confused about. Simple little like push fitting, drill a little hole, a tiny hole at like a 45 degree, and it'll spritz a little stream of water back down. But once your pump stops, it lets air in and breaks your siphon. Like there's just so many little simple things you can do.
Yeah. I had another one for a siphon break that I came up with, again, just using what I owned. I don't
Mhm.
well, maybe I did go to the store to buy one thing. I had
Mhm.
the idea in my head that, because like you were saying, when you're topping off, I like a big, tall container full of water because we usually have a narrow space at the end of the sump, but you have a lot of vertical space. And
Yeah.
so I wanted a big container. But if you fill it up with water, people quickly discover once you turn on the top off one time, it will drain all the water out through siphon.
Yep.
And so I came up with a solution, a workaround. I took a piece of acrylic and a piece of round acrylic that was a rod, and I glued it to the main piece. So it became like a flagpole stand, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I set that base in my sump, and then I
Oh, I
screwed
remember
a
this.
acrylic tube on it, and then you could trickle into that, and it would break the siphon because it was trickling at the top of this. I call everything a chimney. Everything is a chimney in my life, and that
Eating
was a spinning chimney.
chimneys and ATO chimneys. No, I
I
remember
know,
this
yeah,
actually.
heat time auto feeder chimney. I mean, everything's a chimney to me. I always say where the water goes down is a chimney. It's dumb.
You were Santa Claus in a previous life. Um, no,
That's
but
fun.
I remember this, and you were actually the first time I remember seeing that. I was like, huh, that's a good idea. It's a clever way to do it. Yeah, you just had just a chunk of PVC pipe up just to raise it so it's going up and over rather than having that
Right.
water level
Yeah, as
difference.
long as it's higher than the water level in the container, you can do whatever. And it's just a matter of how to secure that PVC pipe. Or in my case, what I used was an under gravel filter tube. Those are
Hmm.
always clear back in the day. They're cheap. You get them at Petco or PetSmart. And it probably came in like a 30-inch piece or a 3-foot piece. And then you could just cut the right height you needed. And so, like, I had one in my sump that was probably like 28 inches tall,
Hmm.
set on that peg acrylic base I made so it wouldn't flop over. And it did the job.
Nice. That's perfect. Question in the chat: what 3D printer program is used for CAD? So I use Fusion 360 for like fancier things, or I just use SketchUp for simple things.
Every
But
time you 3D print something, do you dump it into Thingiverse so everyone else can print it or not?
I'm starting to. I threw a bunch of stuff in there, but
Yeah.
actually, into my car. What I made yesterday. So I have a little like 3D charging pad thing that I got from my car, and you put your phone on it. It does like the wireless charging thing.
Mhm.
However, it only works if it's like perfectly centered. So I built a little
Yeah.
ring with guides so that I can just go bloop and it like bloop and like makes it fall into the right spot. So when I'm driving, it just
Neat.
tops it off. That was my
Yeah.
latest thing I made like yesterday. I threw in Thingiverse. So fall if you look
I
up
just
Reef Dudes on there, you'll see my random things I'm starting to build.
I just remembered another thing I made. Just again, it's always acrylic. So I had the American Pinpoint pH meter,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of looks like a voltage meter with a long wire that's the probe to the pH probe.
Yep.
And I wanted it near my sump, but how the heck do you put it anywhere? And this, most people would just put a piece of Velcro on the back and stick it to the cabinet and it would fall off when it falls off. But I'm more like I want it to hold in a certain spot and never move until I move it myself.
Yeah.
So I took a piece of acrylic, a straight piece, and I bent it at I don't know, whatever that is, 60-degree angle or something. It was just
Yep.
at a slight slope, and I put a little leg on there. And then I put two pieces going down so that it would fit down on the edge of my sump. And this was my permanent bracket, and I could just set the pH meter on there.
Mhm.
And every time I opened the doors, there was my pH for my tank.
Nice.
And it was, I mean, this was before I had an Apex.
Mhm.
So it was a really nice way to quickly see the number anytime, day or night. And it kept the meter where I knew it wouldn't fall in the water and it couldn't
Yep.
fall. You know, a lot of things I've made were because I didn't trust Velcro, just like I don't trust suction cups.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. My favorite way to mount stuff. Okay. I am a huge fan of steel stands because one, you don't need center braces, but two, you can mount everything with magnets. So if you get a decent magnet, like my old dosing pumps, I just went to, I have a store. What's your cheap little bargain store place that you get like tools at in the States?
Harbor Freight.
Yeah, Harbor Freight. There's one here called Princess Auto. I'm imagining it's a general idea, like you can get good deals on like tools and stuff. But they always had these like big, like heavy duty, like hold your magnet tool strips. So those things.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, those things were like golden for mounting stuff to a steel stand. Like my doses, even like when I had like the Jabo doser, I took a chunk of acrylic, I used a heat gun, I heated it up and then melt it so it was like an angle. And then I just took that onto my big mag. So I'm like thunk, and it like bloop, super tight, mounted, really easy. So even under my tank, I had that Kimura Wi-Fi doser. Everything just magnets on. It's great. Really easy to move stuff, adjust it. Great way if you have a steel stand.
You know, another DIY thing I did recently that was not acrylic, I actually used lumber, was a bracket to hang my EB832 on my steel stand. So I had, because I already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I have 5 EB or energy bars. And then I added the 6th one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, I just did. And I was like, I could hook
Wait,
up all
wait.
these things
How many
here.
do you have?
So I have at least 6 total in the system.
Dang.
Because I've got an EB4, which is all my heaters. That's, you know, all by itself. Then I've got an EB8. And then I've got an EB832. And then the frag system has an EB8. And then the lights on the top of the rack is an EB8. And then I added the new EB832. So what is that's a 6, right?
That's
So
a
anyway,
ton.
I need to put it somewhere, but I want somewhere dry. I thought if I screw it on the wall, you know, with the little bracket they give you,
Mm-hmm.
if I hang it there, when I try to put in the walkboard or remove the walkboard, there's a good chance it might snag on it, hit it, bump it. Or if I'm working the tank and I splash water down my elbow, it might just run right down onto the power right there on the wall. So I thought I'd rather have it under the tank, but I was like, well, how am I going to hold this thing on my tank? And like you were just saying, magnets. Well, that would be my first thought, but how do you connect a magnet or whatever piece you need? Yeah, I guess a magnet to the EB832 and not somehow affect the solenoids inside that work off of, don't they use magnets to open and close the
What?
solenoid? I don't know.
Use a piece
Anyway, I
of
was worried
acrylic
that
as a
magnet
spacer mount.
electronics would mess it up.
Yeah.
So anyway, I made a wooden board that had a top piece and another piece coming down the side, and I mounted the plastic gizmo that the A32 goes on, took the whole assembly and just went over to my stand and I just hung it on my walkboard rail. And
Okay.
now it's under the tank, completely dry, safe. And it was just using a little bit of wood I had in the garage. I didn't have to go out and buy anything.
Does
Glues
it
and screws.
does it move if you move your walkboard?
No, because this is the walkboard has rails that goes into this tube, and I hung it on that tube, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So it's like the permanent part of the stand. There's like the perfect spot.
Mhm.
And then I made a cute little one out of acrylic for my bob for the breakout box.
Yeah, good old Bob.
So
He's a good
it's
guy.
hanging underneath. And that one was super light, very small.
Mhm.
And I also wanted somewhere safe and dry. And I wanted to be able to take it out from under the stand when I have to tighten those little stupid screws. And then when you're done, I could take it and put it right back under the stand. And so I
Yeah.
made a cute little adorable hanger where it's completely safe. And again, that was a DIY thing. And people are like, hey, can you make me one? I'm like, yeah, if you give me your specifics, I could try to make that. But that's the hardest part. It has
Yeah,
to be tailored to the person.
this is true. You need to find a way to make a universal acrylic one that has like some kind of a mount. It's adjustable.
Yeah, you're talking about adjustable. I hate that.
I know. You're like, just give me the
I
measurement.
like things that are forever.
That's
No,
fine.
I get it.
You
It
shall.
just usually involves screws or something. I was like, oh, more work.
It's rough.
You know, if I could glue it together and it's the right size and it work. I mean, okay, take example. skimmer stands. For a long time, people made a skimmer stand out of egg crate and zip ties,
Yep.
or egg crate and PVC pipe.
It's not
Or they
pretty, but
took
it
PVC
works.
cut rings and set on the bottom and put their skimmer on top.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I started making them out of acrylic. And then lo and behold, a few years later, Coral View was releasing the adjustable height skimmer stand. You can adjust it to any height. And I'm just looking at it like, I am not making that. I'd much rather make you the one that matches your system.
Yeah.
And you'll never have to think about it again. It'll last the life of your system or the life of that skimmer.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's going to work with the next one too, but sometimes another skimmer might want a different height. But I wouldn't want something adjustable under a skimmer that's because of the weight of the skimmer. Gravity's pulling it all the time. I just feel like the thing will settle. And with something that's a sturdy one size, can't change.
It's there for life.
Better.
That's fair.
So I make a lot of custom stuff. You asked me yesterday,
Yeah.
do you build a lot of stuff that's, essentially that'd be called cookie cutter?
Mm-hmm.
And I have some things on my site that are, that's what you get. But most of the things I do are tailored exactly to what that customer needs.
Mm-hmm. Nice. What's your most popular product? Like, what do most people go for like? Because your stuff is kind of like, here's a adapter or a stand or some mount or something for your tank. Like, what is the most common one that people are like, I need this in my life?
I've been selling in the last few years a lot of top-off containers because I make them fit the exact size of their stand. That I used to sell tons of sumps, and I don't sell nearly as many sumps now. They're just, I don't know, I'm sure I know exactly why I don't. Because people want lots of colors and they want all these adjustments and they want all these baffles that can move and stuff, and my stuff's more simple. Mine's more it's one thing that does the job, and it gives you the freedom to do whatever you need because there's plenty of space.
I have a question.
Okay.
So on all the like random companies acrylic sumps that I see out there, they're always colored on the back. Why are they never clear on both sides? Yours are all clear, which I like that. Like
mine are clear both sides.
I know, but most of the ones I see on websites, one side's clear and the other side's not. How do you know which side you're putting the sump at? What if it's a peninsula?
Well, yeah, that's 100% true. That is a thing. And then the other problem that a lot of sumps have when I look, and I don't study super hard, but I always take an overview. A lot of times they put the sock in the back, and it's almost always behind the protein skimmer, which makes it hard to get to the sock. And I'm like, why would you not have the sock in the front? It's the one thing you got to change every 3 days for the rest of your life.
Yep.
So I much rather see it in the front. But other popular things that I sell on my site, lots of skimmer stands. I sell lots of DIY baffles for people to glue into a glass tank to make their own sump. I sell a lot of brackets. I came up with a new bracket recently just for the Comore continuous dosing pump.
Yep.
Because it's kind of heavy. It's got those 4 feet, but it's like almost 5 pounds. But it's got nowhere to be. There's, you have it and you're like, where am I going to put this thing? So I made this adorable little bracket for a customer. He's like, I got to have it. And I made it out of 3/8, so it's really strong because I didn't want it to bow with the weight. And he said, I took a picture of it and he's like, you got to put that on your website. And so I did. And, 2 more people have ordered one in the meantime. I don't know how many people own a Comore, but.
Hey, I 3D printed them out for mine, so I'm sure there's a demand out there.
There you go. So you can get one from Devin, you can get one from me.
But yeah, like the one I made, I mean, it's specific to like a glass sump, obviously, but on mine, I made basically like a L shape or like a plus sign underneath, so it could sit on the corner of a sump. So the sump glass was supporting it,
right?
But it was 3/4 or like a quarter or whatever, so it could sit on the edge. So it was basically using up useless space, and it mounted. And I made little circles for the feet to sit in, that way keep it stable. But yeah, it worked pretty well. That was my random DIY one back in the day. I don't have a Comore pump anymore. When I did.
Oh, and then I guess that leads into another thing that I came up with originally for myself. I didn't like that when I put food in my tank, it would float across the surface and go down the drain. And so I made what I call the Eheim chimney because I was using the Eheim auto feeder. And it's just this acrylic bracket with a little square part that goes down or rectangular part that goes down and penetrates the water. So the food hits the water, but it won't go any further. It stays there, and either the fish go up and get the food, or the food gets heavy from the water and flows down into the system where everyone can eat it. And so I made that one for myself. People are like, I need that in my life. And I sold a lot of those.
Nice.
I even went to Eheim at their booth at Mac and said, hey, you guys should sell this. I mean, this should be part of your gizmo. And they're like, oh, that's a really cool idea. And they did come out with something, but it's not as nice as mine.
They should have commissioned you to make a bazillion of them.
Well, like as you were talking about that, I forget the terminology is, but the same kind of stuff they use to make milk jugs.
Yeah.
You know, they extrude it or blown out, or I don't know what there's a name for that.
Not.
But you buy something that costs you like $5,000 and then you can make 10,000 of this item.
Yeah.
And
It's a mold, right? You make injection molded.
yeah, injection molding. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, that I knew there was. I could not think of what it was called. So that right there is how they make their chimney.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of comes together like a shoot a little bit, which I don't think
Yep.
was necessary at all.
They just had to be different, so they weren't copying you. It's true.
Yeah, they're worried about copying me.
Maybe, possibly. Hey, if it was the guy you approach, he's like, "Oh yeah, we gotta make it different so he doesn't go after us." Maybe, you never know. Another good kind of thing, not straight up physical, but electronic projects. If have you ever played with Arduino at all?
I know about it, but that's about as much as I
Okay,
got.
you can buy these little boards for like $5-10, and you can like use. They're basically like a super duper basic little computer, but you can do basic programming on it.
Hmm.
And like I have like these little float valves you pick up for, or not float valves, or these solenoids you can get for like $8-9 or whatever. But like I was thinking about making one of these to like auto flush my RODI and all these different things, and it's just like you can build cool little stuff, and a lot of it is fairly basic, and it's not too hard to learn. So
Yeah,
future project might be coming with that.
I like it. That sounds
Yep.
good. You know, you constantly print little somethings,
Mm.
and a friend of mine said, "Have you ever seen this before?" And I was like, "No, I've never seen it." It was this little bracket that you could screw in the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and then your RODI fitting would snap into it. And
Mm.
so basically, you could have a cutoff that is always on the wall in the exact spot.
Yeah,
So it's not just on a tube; it's secure.
I've
And
seen
he
that.
actually gave me one as a gift, and I was thinking, I'm sure you could print yourself a dozen of those things and use them all over your house.
Oh yeah, I actually thought about it. What I do use to mount the switches is do you know those zap straps with the little screw hole in it?
Yeah,
I use two of
yeah,
those and put one on each side of the fitting, then it's like solid on there. That's what I
yeah.
do.
That's a good idea.
But those
Yeah,
are.
there's all kinds of stuff we've done over the years that you throw in the DIY label.
Hmm.
I mean, I think about this. Probably 2003, 2002, people were making their own metal halide ballast instead of buying one from the fish store.
Really?
They'd get a metal box that you would have
Hmm.
circuit breakers in, and
Yeah.
you'd open it, and they'd put in a transformer, they'd put a capacitor, they'd run the wires out, they'd put wire nuts, boom, look at that. I just saved myself $200. I made my own ballast. And it was called a magnetic ballast.
Yeah.
And they knew to have extra capacitors on hand because they were going to blow out and you'd have to replace them. I mean, I use reef bright ballasts. I don't think about it.
That's
And
funny.
they're electronic ballasts.
Uh,
But yeah, people were making their own stuff in the beginning.
hey, they
Because
still do. There's a will, there's a way.
sometimes because it's not available,
Yep.
like you said at the beginning,
Or
or it doesn't fit your certain scenario, or it could be you can't get it where you live.
yeah.
It's just unavailable.
Or you're like, I can build this for $30. I'm not going to spend 100 on it.
Right.
A lot of that too.
Yeah.
Jonathan, this is a funny but true comment for a lot of things. So Jonathan Christian built a skimmer when I first started. It probably would have been cheaper to buy a used one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the one thing I've never wanted to do is try to make my own skimmer.
No, I don't think I would either. Actually, I've seen people do like those little wooden airstone ones and like a pop bottle upside down. Like you can actually make something that's like half decent for next to nothing. It's totally doable, but it's not as efficient and it's not as pretty. If you don't care about
There was
pretty, you can make anything.
there was a guy somewhere,
Yep.
I think he was in the US. He had a huge tank, like 800 gallons or something, just monstrous.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to make his own skimmer because he was not going to spend that kind of money on a skimmer.
Mm-hmm.
So he got some giant tube. I don't even know what it was. And he took like 15 or 30 of those wooden air stones and he somehow mounted them all together into a brick of something and ran all the tubes down. Had these huge air pumps pushing in air into all those air stones. And those wooden air stones are only good for like 30 days. So
Mm-hmm.
you had to constantly replace these air stones. And he was like, look at the foam coming off of this thing. And I'm thinking, those pumps are so loud and you got to keep buying wooden air stones every month. I was just
Cost
like,
me
I have
$30
no
a
desire
month
to
in
do
Limewood.
this.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
even if like way back in the day, before I had a controller, I built my own using an Arduino. I think it was. It was Arduino or Raspberry Pi, one of the two. I built so many projects.
Now
so
that one I
whatever.
know.
Mhm.
Raspberry Pi?
Yeah.
I think that's something I did a long time ago. All right, keep going.
So I built my own controller out of it, so I could automate plugs and do all that stuff. I hacked apart an auto feeder so I can like do it through the thing. I had a little app to tell me all the stats. You can time stuff. It's basically a glorified timer with some other cool stuff. But then I was like, oh, I'm gonna add a pH probe and all this other stuff. And then to
Yeah.
buy like the probes and the circuits and stuff, it was like hundreds of dollars. I'm like, I could buy a used Apex for less than it'll cost me to buy these probes. So I did. So that kind of led me. So some things is not worth doing unless there's like a specific need or a custom, like your time versus just what it would cost to build something new. So there's always that kind of like trade-off with it.
Because I'm not smart at electronics. I really am not. I mean, I just have not learned it. I had something I wanted years ago when I was dosing phytoplankton. I wanted the ability to push a button on my stand
Mm-hmm.
and it would stop my protein skimmer for 45 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and then just resume skimming. I did not want to have to remember to turn the skimmer back on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I contacted someone in my local area who was in the club. And I said, I want to make this. And I said, I don't know what I need, but I would love someone to help me figure this out. And this guy says, oh, this is super easy. We're going to use a little microchip board, which I think is the Raspberry Pi.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to need an outlet and we're going to need some wire and we need, I don't know, there was the button. And I made the acrylic box to put all this crap in, of course. You know?
Is this your big yellow or red button?
No.
That's a
This
different
was
one.
a black. So this was a little red button,
Okay.
like an inch by an inch that you would press on the top, and it was on a black box. This was on my 55-gallon aquarium a long time ago,
Okay.
back in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made this box, and I would plug that into the wall, and then I had to route out the holes in the side of the acrylic so I could put an outlet that fit exactly perfectly. That was a whole thing because I had to make things out of jigs. I didn't have a CNC to cut out the perfect cutout. And I made this whole box and it worked perfectly except for one thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you'd push the button and it would stop the skimmer. In 45 minutes, it would restart. But if there was a power outage, the power outage somehow to that circuit board taught it someone pushed the button. So if there was a blink in power, my protein skimmer turned off for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, if I unplugged something and plugged it in, protein skimmer was off for 45 minutes. Like, God, I didn't want that. So anyway, it still was a nifty thing because it would auto restart something you stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, to do everything with virtual switches is much easier. But the thing is, the guy said, okay, so here's all the parts you need. And I made it and it worked great.
Mm-hmm.
And I went ahead and I ordered like 15 or 20 more of the little circuit boards. And I got 20 power supplies and I got 20 this. And I was going to make the boxes. And then the guy said to me, well, how much am I getting paid? Because I helped you with this idea. And I was like, what? And he was like, I mean, I literally came to him saying, this is what I want to do. He helped me figure out how to make it. And then
Mm-hmm.
he wanted a piece of the pie, even though he wasn't going to build anything. He didn't pay for anything. He literally was just, he gave me some insight at the beginning.
Here's a beer. Thank you.
So I didn't ever build them.
Ah.
And I had those parts forever in the closet. And one day I was like, I just threw it away. I was like, this is so old school. It's never going to ever be used for anything else. And I threw it all away.
Oh,
But
too bad.
that was one of those things that I DIY'd. And it was really cool while it lasted. And I had the prototype thing for years in the garage. Finally, I was like, throw this away too. I mean, I'm not going to need it.
Okay, on that super simple kind of power-based one, that's kind of essentially what I was thinking about doing with the RODI. Is basically once it gets power, open valve 1, flush for 30 seconds, close, open valve 2, flush for a minute, 2 minutes, and then open valve 3. So basically go through, flush your membrane, bleed off all your TDS creep, and then give you your product water. So I think that'd be super cool. Just right when it gets power, it just does that. You can hook it up to, your controller output and just say, okay, make water mode, pre-flushes everything for you, and lets the water flow. So I think that'll be kind of a cool one.
Idea.
I think so. It'll make your filters last ages. And
If you make a good one, I'll probably just get one from you.
sounds good. I have all the
Because
parts.
I bought an energy bar, I bought solenoids, I bought solenoid power supplies, I bought a huge long Aquabus cable. I mean, I probably ordered $300 in parts so I could flush my RO for 30 seconds. I'm like, God, am I really going to run this wire through my attic and hook up all this BS next to my RO unit? I mean, if your thing is just a small self-contained little gizmo.
Yeah, that's the plan.
All right, let me ask you this.
Yes.
I'm going to give you an idea on the air while you're doing this.
Okay.
I'm going to make you rich.
All right.
Okay, so this thing that you're making, it's always going to have power, right?
It could. I was gonna make it so it just does a cycle once it has power. That way I could hook it up to like either the Apex or the GHL and just be like, oh, make water mode, and it does flush, 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 flush. Okay, make water. And then maybe every hour we'll do like a 30-second flush or something, just like the fancy ones do.
All right. Well, here's my idea, and you can take it or leave it. I've always thought this would be cool. I
Hmm.
always thought I'd sell it someday, but I'm never gonna do it for, for whatever reason. But I always thought when the RO system is on, with water running through it so nicely and quietly that we have a big flood because we forgot.
Yeah.
I always thought there should be an LED light that's on.
Hmm.
Like an LED light that maybe has 6 feet of wire, so you can like put the end of that light somewhere very visible.
Yeah.
When you glance that way, oh, it's still on,
Hmm.
but it turns off when the RO's off.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if your solenoid
Easy.
contraption thing would have the juice
Easy.
to like notice water's going through it, so the light should be on, and now the light should be off because there's no water going. I don't know something, but there should be a visual way of knowing the RO system is on, so we don't flood our floors.
Yeah.
And
No.
I know float valves solve that, but I'm just saying we have forgotten that the darn thing was on.
Oh, I've done that many times. Now there's float valves in everything, but I've had my fair share of wet floors to learn that lesson. Actually, one cool product already. Marriage Saver is the nickname for it. Flood Guardian. That guy is like a little optical sensor towards the solenoid. When I fill tanks, a new tank or anything, I'll throw that on it because it's something that I know is going to be overnight, and then it's like my
Okay.
fail safe. So that's a cool tool to do already. As for doing a little flashy light or something to tell you it's on, super easy. On the new tank I'm doing, I'm thinking about doing hooking the RODI directly to the tank. So that's part of why I'm thinking of doing something to kind of pre-flush it. Why? But
Terrible idea. It's so dangerous.
but is it?
There's an article on my website that warns you do not do that.
Why? Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Read the article, you horrible person.
Tell me the article. It's in your mind. You wrote it. So what's your
Okay,
justification?
So 100 gallons a day is 4 gallons an hour nonstop until
Mhm.
you finally notice.
Mhm.
Usually, when we notice, it's when you hear squish, squish, squish with your shoes in the carpet.
Mhm.
It's really important to not risk throwing off your salinity on the tank.
Mhm.
Now, I know you can put all kinds of fail safes in there, but you know Murphy will always find a way.
So okay.
You don't want to take that chance. So I always, 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 always recommend send it to an auto top off reservoir
Yep.
and shut off the RO system and
So
let the reservoir be your top off. And if
mhm.
your RO system has to turn on twice a week to refill that thing, so be it. But the thing is, if your top off goes nuts and adds all that water because of whatever, it's just whatever's in there, 9 gallons or something.
Okay.
But 100 gallons a day, no, it's way too dangerous. And there's a lot of people that do it.
So
And
okay.
I try to dissuade everyone
All
from
right.
doing it.
So critique my thought. Okay. So arguably one of the more reliable ATOs out there is Tunes the osmolator, right? With
Mhm.
the optical and the float, so different technologies.
Yep.
Instead of the pump, use the RODI switch on it, so that controls your RODI. Now, the output of your RODI also goes to a float valve. So you have the digital one, plus you have a float valve as a backup. And now if you don't want your RODI cycling as much, you also put the ATO on a timer, so it only kicks on for maybe 5 minutes every 8 hours.
Right.
So you have an optical switch and a float valve.
Mhm.
You also have a physical float valve, or sorry, a float switch, a float valve, as well as on a timer, so it can only run for so much every so often. I think that's pretty darn safe. So that was my thought. I'm giving a lot of thought of how do I make this as safe as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm
And
thinking.
then you also mentioned, the duration of how many times your membrane is being used.
Yes.
And even if you're doing TDS creep, which is smart,
Mm-hmm.
your membrane is designed to work long and hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not designed to work 15 minutes a day
Mm-hmm.
and to make you a gallon or two.
Mhm.
It's supposed to be run for hours, make a bunch of water, and shut off. They become more and more efficient the longer they run.
Correct.
And if your system comes on, let's just say every single day it turns on for an hour
Yep.
because of the demand of water, you're actually wearing out the membrane prematurely. And if your TDS creep avoidance system works perfectly,
Yeah.
then at least you're not putting that in your system. But if there are people out there that don't even worry about that, they literally just run the tube and their TDS creep goes in every single time it tops off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I think.
So-
So the only issue I can think with my plan is the TDS creep, killing your DI faster. So if I have this little auto TDS creep eliminator,
Yeah, that'll help with that, but it won't help with your membrane lasting as long because you're running it frequently.
but
The unit's coming on very often.
but does it really matter? It's basically like a giant roll of paper, right? Like a membrane is a giant roll of like a filamentous paper, and
Mhm.
it forces stuff through it. You get TDS creep because it's high TDS on one side and low on the other, and they eventually work their way through to like equalize. Like that's why you get TDS creep. So
No, the TDS creep is coming off of the membrane. It's wicking out while the system's not
yeah,
running.
yeah.
It's sitting in the housing. It's not like it's all on one end. It's literally all within it and on it and around
Hmm.
it. And that's why when you open the valve, all that water in the jacket flushes right into your DI. That's why we try to get rid of it first.
Okay. Okay, you're actually a good man to talk to because you make and sell RDI units. Okay. So with TDS creep, okay, so we get TDS creep because it's all the particles that have been trapped in your membrane. So a membrane gets worn out because it's too many particles trapped in it, basically, right? And it
Mhm.
starts to lose
Yeah, it
efficiency,
clogs up.
clogs
Yeah.
up. So if your water is flowing, you know, what once a week for X number of hours,
Mhm.
or twice a day for whatever, but it equals the same amount of water volume, the
Mhm.
same amount of particles flowing through the membrane. So how would it affect the life of the membrane?
I know that sounds, you would think it's the same, but it literally is exactly what I described.
Yeah.
It's much better to run it once a week, long and hard for 4 hours, than it is to run it 20 minutes a day.
Hmm.
It's just they work. It's just how membranes work. I'm sorry, I don't have more sciencey answers for you
That's
on
fair.
that. I do know it for a fact. I've talked to them because I learned everything I learned
Hmm.
was not necessarily school of hard knocks. It's because I called my supplier incessantly with questions.
Yeah.
And I'd say, explain it to me again. And he'd tell me, he goes, Mark, I'm telling you, I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years. We know what we're talking about. He's like, run it long and hard and shut that thing off. I'm like, got it. And I just quit debating it because I mean, this is literally what he does for a living. This is all they do is massive. Matter of fact, this was the coolest thing. One day I went to Live Aquaria in Wisconsin
Hmm.
to Divers Den,
Yep.
and I toured the facility.
Nice.
And at one point, we went into this one area. We went upstairs and went through this back room, and there was this monster RO system with like stainless steel housings and gauges and pressure readings. And I was like, this thing is so cool. And so I took pictures of it and I sent it to my supplier and I said, check out this system. Isn't this amazing? And he looked at it and he goes, that's one of ours. And I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, that's like a selling point for my business. The stuff that Live Aquaria uses. I'm using that company. This is someone you can trust, you know? And
Nice.
I was like, dang it. I mean, I should have known this 9 years ago. And no, they make these big high end systems. And of course, they've done tons of residential where people are hooking it up under the kitchen sink to make drinking water.
Yeah.
And I'm their only reef customer.
Hmm.
And he says, your customers are nothing like our customers. They are so picky. It's got to be so perfect. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's they are measuring things every single time they turn it on. They are looking at it. They're asking questions. I said that's
Hmm.
why I have a giant fact page on my website answering like 20 RO questions alone in the
Hmm.
FAQ.
That's fair.
But he did say the rule of thumb with all RO systems is you run it long and hard, do not run it frequently. So I'd much rather see you running it, like I said, twice a week than running it twice a day. It'll just your
Yeah,
membrane will die sooner. I can tell you that for a fact. I mean, you can try it out and see what it does.
I probably will.
All it does is cost you another membrane
Yeah, that's fair.
and a membrane and another membrane.
Yeah, so I know that it's more efficient running it longer, like 100% more efficient the longer you run it. But the whole dying thing quicker, we'll find out.
Well, I've had customers kill theirs.
Yeah.
And they come to me a month later saying, so I don't know what's going on with my RO system. And they tell me everything. I was like, your membrane's done. And they're like, in a month? I'm like, that thing's supposed to
What?
last you 1 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the only solution was give them a new membrane. And in that case, I just gave them one. I didn't charge them for it because, I mean,
That's crazy.
they didn't listen to me. And I didn't want to be a jerk about it. And I just like, look, I'm just going to send it to you. I said, but you cannot do that anymore, what you did. And they're like, can you send me a DI too? I'm like, no, but I'll sell you a DI because you killed that too.
Don't push it.
No, I mean, I get it. No, we all try something out and don't understand how it works and think we got it,
Hmm.
and then something goes wrong and it ends up costing us money later, and that just sucks. And I know that feeling, so I don't want to do that to a customer. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm not trying to burn bridges. I'm like, oh, it's your fault. Ha ha ha. Click. I don't
Yeah.
want to be that person. But yeah, no, I don't recommend hooking them to straight to the tank. I definitely don't recommend having come on multiple times a day. So your system of pre-bleeding the TDS is definitely a good helpful solution, but it's not going to help make the membrane last longer. It's just
Hmm.
going to avoid TDS creep into the DI every time it turns on.
That was my only goal.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, you could buy 12 membranes and be good for a year.
Well, I don't think it'll die
I'm
that
joking.
fast.
I'm joking. It's not quite that bad.
speaking of all my RODIs on right now, refilling all my bins. Yeah,
It's a
Greg.
little.
Greg was saying the Tunesy RO controller, they do have that, which basically have a float switch in the bottom and top of your container and just auto refills it. I mean, that is an option. I could use a normal ATO and then just have like a 10-gallon ATO container, which maybe comes on every 4 days,
Right.
instead of
That's
every
perfect.
day.
I highly recommend that. Do that.
But I don't know. We'll see. I almost want to try and just see how long the
I
memory
know.
lasts.
You just want to be stubborn.
Yeah, that's true.
It's weird. Canadians are supposed to be nice. I don't get this.
We're nice. We're friendly. We're all friends here. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I would just less room and less stuff in the stand. I'll have an RDI, on the wall, but save a bunch of space. We'll see. We'll see. The tank's
Less
coming
stuff
soon.
in the stand. You have the most stuff in any stand I've ever seen. You've got the Alcatronic, you've got triple dosers, you've got a Clarisy, you got the skimmer. You probably have GFO in there if I know you. Might have a refugium with some plants. There's a light with a light guard that you 3D printed.
Thank you.
What else do you have? Probably an ATL reservoir.
We're talking about the water box.
Is there a chiller jammed in there too?
The water box. Yeah, there's a
I don't
lot.
know.
There's a lot in the water box.
Yeah, I'm thinking of all the videos I've watched where you've shown underneath. I'm like, holy crap! I mean, that's a lot of stuff in a very small footprint.
It's all about efficiency. Okay, so
Yeah.
the end compartment, since someone just mentioned ozone, so I got my ozone generator, I got the calcium reactor, CO2 tank,
There you
and,
go.
and I have a old school Apex power bar, which is on the top of the stand, so you don't really see it. So,
Nice.
that's one thing I learned, is I have energy bars on both ends of the stand. In the past, that's always been a bit of an issue, because I always sort of like want to be pretty and nice and hide your wires, but then you wanted to maintenance something and it's like a huge pain in the butt to get your wire out because it's going through all this channel. So now there's a power bar at each end, so it's whatever's closest and convenient rather than trying to route everything everywhere. So that's been one thing that's a bit nicer. And then even on like the new tank, so I'm going to try JHL control on the new tank because I've never tried them, so I'm like, I'm gonna try it. So I'm gonna have Apex on one, JHL on the other. And same thing, I got 2 power bars. I'm like, yep, got 2, don't have to worry about it. I can put one on each end and get it covered. So
Another DIY thing I did a long time ago under my 55-gallon. That tank had a lot of creativity. I took a long board and put it across the back of the stand on the inside. When you open the doors, you saw this long board way up high.
Yeah.
And I mounted at least 6 outlets across the back. And they all were daisy chained, and then they plugged into the wall. So that way everything could just have a wire go straight up and plug in.
nice.
So the plug right behind the skimmer was the skimmer. This one was right above the heater. This was right above the refugium. This was right above the return pump. And I had them all spread across, and they were in a spot where they couldn't get squirted or wet or ruined. Oh, cooling fans. That was another thing I had on there that was blowing down.
That was a good idea.
Like I said, by scattering the plugs, I didn't have to worry about a cord not reaching. I didn't have to cable management everything. I could basically manage them to their own outlet. And that was and it was a nice clean solution. I really liked it.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's a good way to do it. Josh Powell, do you ever get worried about fire hazards of running loads of devices 24/7? Failing power boxes or AC plugs? No. No issues. Most of the stuff we run is very low power, right? So it's not really a huge load. Aside from like lighting or a heater, I mean, everything else is really low wattage, relatively speaking. So not really a big issue.
Anything can fail at any time. There's something that could go wrong or burn up or die at some point in your life as an aquarist. I mean, it just is. Just like anything in your house can ignite at some point or rupture or burst a seam or create a leak. I mean, it's just anything can happen. So, I mean, you just can't live your life thinking, oh my God. Like, for example, you buy a TV, you got a great deal on it. You know it came from China. You still bolt it to the wall, you plug it in the wall, and you never think about it. You never think once that could burn my house down. It doesn't even occur to you, even though it's electric. I mean, it's just anything can go wrong at any time. And, for example, my car, I used to drive a Ford Explorer, and they had a recall, and I ignored the recall. And I mean, because I'm busy. And they kept sending me letters. You got to do this. You got to do this. And I was reading the recall thing. It says, some cars have caught fire. I'm like, whatever. And my car's in the garage. Now, if my car had caught fire, it would have caught the garage on fire, which would have caught the house on fire, and we could have all died, and there wouldn't be a YouTube stream today. But, after about 9 years, I did my recall.
And it didn't catch on fire?
No, it never caught fire. That was some cars. It wasn't every car out there is going to catch fire.
As you bring it into the dealership, they're like, all these wires are melted. No, that happened.
I mean, I mean, I've had some things happen over the years, but I've never had the worst offender I ever had that I can think of, and there might be another one, but the worst one I remember was the Rio 2500 return pump. And everyone bought that pump. It was dirt cheap, came over from China,
Hmm.
and it was the most well-known tank killer there was. When that thing exploded in your system, in your sump or in your whatever, yeah, it had to be your sump basically. Um, it would not only short out and put ozone and everything into the water, but this black tar oozed out into the water, and all that went everywhere, and it
Right.
killed your tank.
Right.
And it happened to so many people. The Rio 2100 and the Rio 2500 were known tank killers, and so I had a couple of those pumps, and I never used them on my tank, but I did use it to mix salt water in a barrel,
Hmm.
because when I pump water in my tank, I'm holding the pump, I'm aware of what's going on. I plugged it in, I unplug it. Even
Yeah.
when it's mixing salt water, it's mixing in a barrel that can't affect my system until I take that water and put it in my tank. And
Yikes.
one day I heard this really weird sound, and it sounded like something was arcing. It sounded like thunder. It sounded explosive. And I'm like, what is that sound? And I'm looking around, I'm trying to figure it out. And then finally I lift the lid to my trash can full of salt water. All the smoke comes out, the water was black, and I pull up the hose and there's that cooked pump. I was like,
Yikes.
that's why it's not my return pump. That's why I used a mag pump as a return pump, because it wouldn't kill your tank.
Wise.
But I spent a lot of time on Reef Central telling people, don't use that pump in your tank, throw that pump away, buy a different pump. I mean, it was
Hmm.
a monster thread with everyone, sharing their experiences of how it hurt their system.
And yet people
And
still bought
it
and
was
used them.
amazing that thing wasn't like out of, like sued out of existence.
Well, because they're overseas and you can't really do anything about it,
Yeah.
basically. Ah,
Yeah.
and that's the importance of that little ELUL sticker to make sure it's certified, not gonna
It's
self.
nice. It's nice, but how many of us think about that literally? Like,
Nobody, ever.
you know, you get these wires, usually off brand, for example. Let's say you have an iPhone
Hmm.
and it comes with a company wire, the Apple wire, and it's whatever it is, 4 feet. You're like, God, I need like 10 feet. You go to Walmart, you go to AutoZone, you go to 7-Eleven. There's a wire that'll fit my iPhone. I don't care what it's $4. I'll buy that. You don't sit there and open it up and look for the UL listing. You're just like, psh, plug it in both ends. And then all of a sudden your iPhone's on fire. You're like, oh no, I shouldn't have used that wire.
Why is this
I mean, that's
cable
really
so
how
hot?
it is.
What do you mean they only use half the copper to make this cable? Yeah, there's certain things where having the right one is just worth it.
Oh, I agree, but I'm saying I don't think we're nearly as analytical about it. I think people ask those things in chat more than they live that way. They're like,
Probably,
"Don't you ever worry about everything just igniting and burning your house to the ground?" Like, no, I just live my life.
pretty much.
And I'm
Just
not making fun of him. I'm making fun of the concept.
yeah. So okay. So if yeah, the good old black boxes have that either love hate relationship, and I've seen a few of those do some sketchy smoking or other.
Oh, the lights.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
like the cheap China ones. I mean, okay, so black box is just generic term for the cheap China lights with like little rheostat switches on the top. And I've used some. Some work great. Others are questionable. But
yeah.
same thing.
No, the biggest thing about our tanks is keeping the electrical away from the salt water
Hmm.
as much as you possibly can. If you can put a divider up to like have your electrical behind a divider where it's just not near the moist environment of the sump, where it's not likely to get sprayed or spattered by the protein skim overflowing, just those kind of things. If you
Hmm.
can somehow isolate it and put it, the worst thing I see a lot of people do, they just don't think this is that important. They get the little power strip that's like 6 outlets
Hmm.
and they lay it down in the stand and plug stuff into it. And it's down on the bottom. And there's holes in the back where you can mount it on the cabinet up high and you can
Hmm.
screw it in. That's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to secure that up high and
So
then, have
drip
drip
loops.
loops everywhere.
Hmm.
Right. But a lot of times we see like somebody goes, oh, my tank caught fire, and they show pictures and there's that power strip in the middle of a puddle. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, what did you think was going to happen?
Right.
It's not going to, so if you're listening to this stream now and you're thinking my power strip hasn't hanging up yet, you need to hang that sucker up.
Even with I ran power to my tank for putting outlets there. I mounted
Yeah,
them inside the stand at the very top corner so that they're
yeah,
upside down. Like it is
yeah,
impossible for water to drip into that outlet.
yeah. That's great.
Do you use ground fault plugs on stuff?
I have a
Fault breaker?
grounding probe, is what I
Probe?
call it,
Okay.
and it's an actual probe that's in my sump, and it goes to the center screw on my outlet. It's the ground, and
Hmm.
I've always done that on my tanks for my own personal protection.
Hmm.
And it's I mean, if you go on the internet, 50% are totally for it, 50% are 100% against it. And I will continue to do that with every tank I have
Yeah.
because the ground protects me.
Yeah.
And they say, well, you're just letting the power channel through and go right through your fish and your corals. I'm like, I still don't want it to go through me.
I've never used a grounding
So,
probe. So you put them on
yeah, I
everything?
mean, you can always take if you have one,
Hmm.
take it out of the tank and measure your tank for stray electricity.
Hmm.
Then once you're done testing and everything's good, put that thing back in where it belongs.
So to test for stray electricity, you just take a meter and pop one end in a electrical socket and the other in your tank and see if there's a reading.
Pretty much.
Okay.
It's one side. There's an article on Reef Addicts that
Yeah.
shows how to do it.
I've looked it up a long time ago. I was just curious. I
Yeah.
think I tried it one time just to see.
Oh,
Uh,
I did it. I had like 48 volts going in my system. And the way you always find out if you have any power in your tank is if you have a cut on your finger and you reach in the water and you feel a little tiny bit of a tick, just like a little sting. You're like, what is that? And you're like, the next time you put your hand in, they're like, ooh. And you're
yep.
just like, there's something really, I think it's the water. I think there's electricity in there.
I don't
And
remember
so I
buying
got that
electric
meter
eel.
out. That's what made me write that article.
Hmm.
And I tracked it down to an old power head.
Huh.
It was
Yeah.
just a penguin power head. Those were, I think penguins and maxi jets came out around the same time, maybe. And it was
Hmm.
just something I bought at the fish store, and it still worked. So I stuck it in the refugium for a little extra flow to keep the plants clean.
Hmm.
And that darn thing was putting so much electricity in the water, I didn't even know it. And like my protein skimmer put out like 1 amp in the water. My calcium reactor put out like 1 amp, but that power head, I think it's an
One
amp.
amp
I'm
or
probably saying the
what?
wrong thing. It wasn't a
One
watt.
volt?
Maybe it was a volt.
It's there for life.
No, so when I removed that power head, it brought the number way down, and then I was down to like 1 volt. It's like, well, I can't.
That's not bad.
I got to run my protein skimmer. I'm not going to buy a brand new Eheim pump. I'm like, that's one. We're good with one. I'm going to just keep it that way.
Yeah.
And then I put my ground probe back in.
Now, don't try this at home. But completely unrelated, I remember reading some study about putting electric current through the water on purpose, and it's supposed to like stimulate coral growth or something like that.
A low voltage. It's
Yeah.
something you do in the ocean when they're trying to grow coral on like rebar rafts.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it really works, but
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. I mean, I'm assuming they've proven it by now, but
mhm.
I still don't see very many people doing it. I mean, what do? Lower a car battery into the ocean
I don't know.
and hook up the 2 wires to your rebar and just, oh, here we go. I'm going to grow some Montipora.
Just sit out there in your boat with your battery floating around. Yeah, who
Right.
knows? I don't know. It seemed like a weird concept, but I was just curious to see if it was actually true.
Yeah,
Or
it definitely is goofy. Yeah.
Yep. Do. What other cool stuff have you any other kind of creative weird things you've built recently, or customers have asked for, or
I have people ask me for things all the time. One of my general rules as a businessman
yeah.
is not to make something another company makes.
Hmm.
So if they say, hey, can you make me this thing? I'm like, talk to that company.
They
It's
already did it.
And they're
Yeah.
just like, well, yeah, but I need this. And I'm like, they'll make it. This is what they do.
Hmm.
Don't ask me to clone it because I feel like it's wrong. I don't know. It's just, I'm really grateful the companies out there don't copy mine.
Yeah. No,
So
exactly.
I'm turning the favor. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, I really wish could, like this one guy wanted something that created like an all-in-one inside a 40-gallon breeder.
Yeah.
And this one company has made a box. You lower it in, and you have to hold it in or put something heavy in the bottom, and then add water, and so it quits floating. And it'll let you have your return pump in there, and I guess you can put some mesh bags for filtration. And there was a nozzle with a little bit of lock line.
Yeah.
This was a little tiny pump you had to find. And he wanted me to basically recreate that. Well, yeah, I can make the acrylic box, but he's going to want that little bulkhead. He wants the little fittings. He wants the tube that goes down to the pump.
It's
He
like,
wants their kit.
Just buy
I'm
it.
like, buy their kit. And he goes, yeah, but I need it to be 3/8 of an inch shorter. I'm like, talk to them. I mean, it's not a rude thing. It's just like they're already set up to do this. They can definitely make more than one size.
Yeah. Okay. So here's
You
something.
might wait, but
Yeah.
they'll do it.
There's yeah, so yeah, Antonio's in here with like the VCA vacuum nozzle. So I was like, you make me one? I'm like, no. I'm like, it's $15. Go buy it. It's amazing. I'm like, it is not worth the effort. When he has one that's like bad, like I have legitly made my own just for fun. His is better and it's cheaper and it saves you like hours of your life to create it. Just buy it.
And I sell a bunch of them.
Yeah, they're awesome. I have one too. It's great. I love it.
I just used mine last week.
Yeah.
I did my water change. That was huge news. I don't know why that didn't become the stream topic. Mark changed water in his reef for the first time in forever. But I grabbed the VCA nozzle and I vacuumed out a lot of the detritus that happens right under the Clearacy. Does
Hmm.
your Clearacy do that too?
Collect stuff?
No, draw. It just
Oh,
sheds. There's a whole pile of detritus right under the Clearacy.
I can't see from here. I'll look later. I don't think so, but I'll go look.
Really?
I'm curious
Mine
now.
always does that. I mean, it's on
Hmm.
the fleece, but then it seems to shed it at the same time, or I don't know. I'll take a picture next time it's dirty because I just cleaned it out.
Okay.
But I love that attachment. It was a $10 thing.
Yeah,
It's 15 in Canada. You guys are really getting ripped off up there.
it's rough. Dang, dang imaginary lines and exchange rates. Ay, ay, ay. But that's what
Imaginary exchange rates.
yeah, I know. But like that's the thing. Like some things, it's just worth buying it. Especially when it's like cheap enough, anyways. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
mhm,
definitely.
yep.
I know people were really. I made a video about it. When I did the video, I was literally using it for the first time when I videoed. What I should have done was used it 10 times, gotten used to it and then done it. But instead, I was taking my time. I was going slowly. People are like, oh my God, that's taking forever. I would never do that. Just get a shop vac. I'm like, no, this thing is awesome. I love it. And I've used it probably 20 times over the last couple of years. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
great little tool. I'm in and out in a matter of minutes and it does what I need. And it just fits on a maxi jet. It's awesome.
Hmm. No, 100%. I agree with you on that one.
I would not want to DIY that.
It's not worth it. It's just not. The amount of time and effort it is not worth it. And it's cheap enough, just buy it. So,
Right.
so yeah. So the side rant was more the fact that like some things just are not worth DIYing, especially if it's cheap.
Right.
One thing though, do I still have it here? You know that like craft mesh stuff? Not overly DIY, but this stuff, it's for like
Yeah.
craft netting, whatever. I don't even know what they use it for. Something to do in the sewing
It's for
section in
needle.
stores. Yeah, something like that. Maybe they make pictures on a grid or something. But this is what they use inside of like algae scrubbers and different things.
Yep.
So I've seen people use to make their own. Apparently, I was talking to Chris from ACI on a previous stream, and he uses to grow zoas on it because they spread easy on it, and it's really easy to frag it. I'm like, I'm gonna try that. I picked up some, so I'm gonna try putting a couple zoas on it and see how that works.
Oh,
Thought it
let
was
me
a
go
cool
get
idea.
something I made that has been handy. No one's ever made but me.
Ho ho ho!
One of a kind.
Excellent. I like it. Do 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 do. So yeah,
Okay, so in my fish room, I have a French drain.
oui, I do. Oui, mon ami.
And in that drain, I have a grate on the top so that way water can flow through the grate and then get out of the room if there's a problem or if I'm doing a water change.
Mm-hmm.
But the grate was in the concrete and I put it in the concrete as the concrete was wet so it would never come out because I was always afraid if you put a step ladder and the foot pushes, it pops the grate out and I fall down and, break a bone or something. So I always kept it embedded in the concrete. So when I was doing water change, I couldn't just put the hose through the grate. The grate's too small. So
Yeah.
I needed a solution so I could have water coming out of the sump and go to my French drain.
Mm-hmm.
So I made this little box. And this little box,
Yes.
it's clear on the top and it's got your screen inside there.
Yeah.
And on the bottom, it's got a little notch right here.
To fit the grates.
And it's got the hole for the tubing. And there's a notch right here. So the way this works, this fits perfectly down in my grate in two of the slots so it can't move.
Mm-hmm.
I start the siphon on the tubing and jam it in the hole really quick. And then water flows into the box. And this keeps the end of the tube from ever moving while I'm working in the sump, vacuuming or whatever I'm doing as I'm cleaning. This keeps it secure and the water just trickles out and I can see what's happening from above. And the screen traps any big things like if I had coral skeletons or snail shells or just sucked up something, it would be trapped in the box and not go into the drain. And so this little guy, like I said, it was a one-off thing. And I made one that lasted me many years, but I kept kicking it. When I was done, it was on the floor, but it was clear acrylic and I didn't see it and I would kick it and break it. And I kept trying to make it work because I needed the water to go down the middle, come out the bottom here. It's a little narrow here. So that way water has to go in the grooves of the drain grid. And this thing worked out perfectly. And then I made a nicer one that I can see. And I haven't broken this one yet, but I just used this one last weekend. It was perfect. It's exactly what I needed and very DIY, very specific.
That is super duper niche, but yeah, that's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. No one's going to want that thing. There's no one has that need that I did. But I liked that it was something that helped keep things clean and it kept the tubing secure and it put the water exactly where I wanted it and nowhere else, and it just worked exactly as planned. And yeah, very niche is a understatement. It's like
Hmm.
one guy in America needed it.
Well, you just got to sell more people on your French drain. It's a great idea, though. I'd love to have a big, huge drain in the middle of the floor. You never have to worry about stuff. That's awesome if you can do it.
The French drain was DIY.
I
Okay, I'll tell you about
okay.
that.
Yes.
So the fish room itself is actually my garage floor. And the garage floor was about 4 inches lower than the rest of my house. And so my previous aquarium, when you walked into the room, you had to step down to walk because it was going down to the garage floor. And everyone that was a guest would come into my house, they'd always fall.
Hmm.
I'd always say there's a step, and they're just like looking at the phytoplankton and the brine shrimp and the aquarium and the sump and the skimmer, and they'd fall. I mean, they'd stumble forward. And I was like, oh my God, I just told you. Like, I know, but everything's so cool in here, you know. And they'd see the air conditioner it had, and everything was its own, right?
Hmm.
So I said, with a new tank, no one's ever going to stumble into my fish room again. I'm going to pour my own concrete and I'm going to make a slab that's the same height as the rest of the house.
Yeah.
So when you walk in, it's the same height. And I
Perfect.
said, while I'm pouring this concrete, which I did myself, by the way,
Atta boy.
DIY, I then made my French drain.
Yeah.
And so the French drain itself is a piece of 3 inch, I think, PVC pipe that I cut in half. So it's a half a moon.
Hmm.
And then I found those grates at Home Depot. I don't know what they're mainly for, but
Yeah.
I discovered that it would fit exactly down on the half moon of the half PVC pipe. And so it
Nice.
locked on there. So I
Perfect.
took this thing, I made it, it's 10 feet long, and I wrapped it with plastic and I put duct tape on top and I placed it in the middle of where this drain's going to go, and I poured all my concrete.
Hmm.
And so I thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to have this amazing drain. What I did not know was going to happen was my PVC assembly would float upward because it's light and the concrete just pushed it up. So now I've got this whole swimming pool of concrete trying to dry, and my French drain is sitting on top of it like a duck on a pond. And I was like, I need this thing to go down into the concrete. So I had to walk on top of my French drain to press it in the concrete,
Hmm.
and I'd put bricks on it, and I'd
As
walk
it's drying.
yeah, as it's drying, and I'm putting bricks to get the right weight so it doesn't sink too far, but holds enough pressure, to counterweight to get it level with the concrete. And that drain, like I said, I mean, I just cleaned it for the first time after 10 years, and I was able to pop off those grates, which
Yep.
with a pry bar, and I cleaned out the trench with a spoon to get rid of all the detritus. And then I
Yummy.
wiped it down with a sponge. It looks like brand new PVC pipe again.
Nice.
And then when I took the frames and pushed them back in, I had to use a rubber mallet to tap them back in. They stay. All this time I was scared to
Perfect.
pull one out. It turns out I could have removed them a long time ago for cleaning, or to run snake a hose down there. I didn't know I could. I thought they'd be loose. And turns out it's all, I mean, that was a huge project. I don't ever want to do it again, but I did do it myself.
Well, there you go. Now every 10 years you give it a clean and you're back to new. That,
Yeah.
that,
But
that
no, that drain was a DIY thing too, I wanted, instead of
I like it actually. It's
however
a
it's
great
normally
idea.
done.
I like it.
Yeah.
What one other thing that's kind of cool was it if you like in data centers, I thought
Mhm.
about this. It's they have like a raised floor, like it's a mesh with like a subfloor
Yeah.
underneath. There's like a space. They do it for cooling, but if you could have that with like a fish room and like a floor drain, you'd like never see water ever in your life. Um,
Yeah.
someone was asking,
With you. And I've considered it, and I know some people do it, but the thing that bothered me about it was if you drop something, it's going to go right through the grate. Or if a
yeah,
fish, God forbid, were to jump, it's going to go right through the grate and that's it.
fair
Because
point.
you'll never get the grate up fast enough to rescue your little guy. It's like, oh my God. And you're just like moving equipment out of the way like Hercules and pull the grate up and find the fish. And I just thought, I'm just not going to do that. So
Yeah.
I have a solid floor. But I love the idea of some kind of like you were saying, a grid
Hmm.
or the FRP material, or even if it's the wood slats like you might see in the bottom of a steam room,
Yeah.
where you walk in
Oh yeah,
barefoot.
yeah. Those are
That
just
type
like
of
cedar
stuff.
floor.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like a cedar floor, exactly. Something along those lines would be kind of nice.
so
But things would just fall through it and it would suck.
do you spill on your floor very often, or are you like
Not
pretty
too
pretty
much.
careful? Yeah.
Not too much, but I've had times where things like the skim would overflow.
You're like, cause I
It would overflow
can.
the waste collector,
Yeah.
but it would flow right into the French drain, which was exactly why I made the drain. And when the 400 leaked and the water was squirting out, I didn't have to mop anything. It just went
Hmm.
to the French drain, and the next day when I got up to deal with the aftermath, I had a dry floor. I was like, "That drain was so awesome."
Now, do you
I
get
was
in?
so glad I made it.
That is pretty awesome. But now, if you ignore it, do you actually clean your floor or squeegee it, or you're like, meh, it's fine, and you get little salt crystals and stuff build up?
I mop that floor 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah.
I like to sweep it and mop it. I like to get it nice and clean. Matter of fact, it's like I said, it's 10 years old,
Hmm.
and some of the paint is eroding away, which is disappointing, as I like the color. I painted it kind of an aqua blue,
Hmm.
and I'm ready to, like, I don't know what I need to do specifically. I'm gonna talk to the guys at Home Depot or Lowe's and find out what I have to do to prepare the floor so I can put a new coat down.
Hmm.
Because I'm assuming if something's flaking off and I put more paint, it'll just flake off the new paint because the undercoating is loose.
Hmm.
So I need to figure out how I need to clean it or prepare it or whatever to make it super sticky so I can put my new coat of paint and make it look nice and fresh again. And of course, my other concern is, are the fumes going to affect the reef tank while it's drying?
Yeah.
I might have to wait until, we have better weather. I can have the doors open
Yeah.
for fresh
That's what I would
something.
do, as long as the door's open. Wait, better
Turn on
weather.
this.
You mean not so hot in Texas?
Right now, it's not bad. I mean, right
Yeah.
now our high today was like 89 degrees.
That's not
It's
bad.
not over 100 like normal, but we're not in summer yet. This is
That's
just the
true.
big.
This
Our
is
our September and our August is vicious here.
Yeah. July and August are the scorchers for me here. It's
Really?
coming.
Same for you guys? Okay.
Yeah, July, August. It happens. I was supposed to be in Texas like last month, but then all the trips got canceled.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's been canceled.
I know. Oh well. Eventually. Um, can you fill a 120 with salt on the floor then? Oh, with all the salt built up on the floor, maybe? Yeah, it gets all rinsed out. Yeah, I would totally just repaint over top your floor. I don't know if you'd have to etch it or anything first, though, for it to stick to itself, or if it would or not. Depends what kind of, did you do
Some areas
epoxy
are
coat
just
it, or
bare
would you do?
concrete now.
Yeah.
So I'd have to clean it up. Or the other thing is you can put down that beautiful cobalt water absorbing rug. Just cover it so you don't see it and it can catch any water you spill.
Water absorbing rug.
Have you not seen it? It's awesome. It's got a
No.
big fish on it.
Really?
It's I took it. I'll send it to you as a text. It's I took a picture of it today for somebody that was asking about it.
You have one?
Yeah, I got it. I actually ordered it from Cobalt, so it's going to your phone right now, or on Messenger. um, that right there was the biggest one Cobalt sells. It's available at Petco too. I thought of myself for my website, so I found out Petco sold it. I was like, well, it'd be cheaper for anyone just go to the store and pick it up
That's
and
fair.
not pay shipping.
Does it work well? Is it like waterproof in the bottom, or it's
Yeah,
basically
it's
like a
rubber
big
on the
bath towel,
bottom,
right?
and it
Okay.
can absorb, I think, like a gallon and a half of water or 2 gallons of water.
That's not bad.
It's very it's like these little. It's hard to explain. The foam that comes up, the little fingers, they all absorb water.
Hmm.
And so it's actually great. I haven't had to clean it once. I'm ready to like shake it out and maybe throw it in the washing machine once, kind of make
Nice.
it clean.
Ah,
Yeah, it's a cool little thing I picked up, and I like it. It matched the bottom of my fish room anyway, so it was perfect.
perfect. Yeah, if I know any...
People were joking on Instagram that I had this chalk outline of a fish that jumped.
this is the body, the police markings. Nice.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I always just throw a towel down if I know I'm likely going to drip or do something, if I'm cleaning the turf scrub or something. But no, that's kind of cool. It's good to have a dedicated one.
Yeah.
Yep. I actually have a rug. Every single service person has 2 of them. Big one holds 4 gallons. Look at that. Not bad at
Oh,
all.
4. Okay. It might be how many gallons based on what size the rug is too.
Probably.
Like maybe the giant one's 4, and the medium is 3, and the smallest one because they had 3 sizes.
I'm impressed it holds that much water. Like that's...
Yeah, it's a decent amount.
I'm gonna have to get one.
So like when I work on that turf scrubber, I really don't have to think about it. I can
Yeah.
just do my thing.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. I like it. Beautiful.
And
It's comfy.
it's a soft spot when I'm standing behind the tank and
I-
I'm a fish.
I have a bath mat that looks similar. I wonder how well that would work relative to the fish one. But it's still an impressive amount of water.
Yeah, yeah.
Beauty. Well, we're over an hour. I think we've covered most of the randomness for today.
It was random.
It is. I don't know. They usually are random. Loosely on
I
topic.
really do think DIY is a great idea for specific things.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things I've built out of necessity
Mhm.
because I needed something, but I couldn't afford to buy it outright, maybe. But I'm also a person that likes nicer things.
Mhm.
I do, I run Vortex. I
Yep.
have Radions. I have, I all my stuff's made out of 3/8 acrylic instead of 1/4 inch, so it's very durable. I really do care about quality, and I like to use what most people call higher end.
Hmm.
So
I'm
because I
the
don't
same.
rely on it. It's not something I have to tinker with. I don't like to tinker on something nonstop.
Hmm. No, it's true, and I 100% because half of me loves DIY and half of me buildings, and half of me likes the fancy stuff. Like I'm like
Yeah.
you, right? I like my Vortex, I like my expensive but fancy gear, and I'll eventually buy them, even if I DIY it. And one day I know I'm gonna buy the fancy version because that's just who I am. But
You know, Devin, I think you spend more on aquarium stuff than I do.
probably.
You bought the Alcatronic, you bought the I mean, you have bought so much gear where I'm like, I have that. Why do I need to buy that thing? You know, I don't why would I need to add that to my
You,
collection?
how many tanks do you
And
have,
you just
Mark?
said, I'm gonna buy the GHL. I'm having Apex here,
How many tanks do you
GHL
have?
there. I have the Anemone Cube and I have the Reef.
How long have you
That's
had
two
those
tanks.
tanks?
And then I have the frag system.
Okay, two and a half, three. Okay, fair.
Oh yeah, but I built the frag system. I made the stand, I made the tank, I made everything in it. I bought the skimmer,
That's fair.
I
Every
bought the lights, you
uh,
know, everything else I made.
that's fair.
But but my point is like, you're buying a GHL controller rather than just having the Apex run one more tank with a PM1, which is totally what I would do.
So I considered it, but one, there was no easy way to fish wires. I couldn't even fish an RODI line over because I wanted to share the auto top off. So I really was gonna do that. And then I was like, well, I can go in the attic, but then I'm like, well, is it gonna be an issue in winter running water lines in the attic? So nothing got connected. So I did consider that. But the other half of me is like, as the YouTuber mind is like, that's a whole new stream of content. I can play with new toys, or now I can talk about this because I have an E-Coral in one tank, I have Apex on another tank, I'll have GHL on another tank. So now I can try all these different things out, right? Like, so part of me is a sane reefer would probably just pick a brand and stick to it, so it's easier. But me, I'm like, I haven't tried that one yet. Like first time I cycled a tank, I'm like, okay, this time I'm using Dr. Tim's, next time I'm using Frights, next time I'm using Brightwell. Like I purposely try different stuff constantly, just because then I have
Right.
more experience and I can better talk
Well,
about
that
different
part's
things.
true. That's what I said. I think you spend more than I do.
Oh, stupid amounts. It's ridiculous.
Because I just stupid amounts.
I do it.
I just like to keep it running, keep it happy, keep it growing,
Yeah,
show it off.
that's fair.
That's pretty much it.
But like,
Look,
okay.
it's 6.5 years old. It's 6 years and 7 months. It's 6 year and 8 months. That's my
Mhm.
story over here. You're like, look, I built a new tank this week. I'm like, geez, again?
I have a goal of getting down to 2 tanks. And I just realized after many years, I've realized it seems to be 2 big tanks to fulfill my needs. Because
Yeah.
the little ones, you're like, oh, I'm out of space. I need another little one. All of a sudden, you're back up to a bunch of tanks again. And I have too many tanks. I'm like, all right, back to consolidating. So that's my goal. Big tank, got my nice big display one, then a big frag one in here, then it'll be good. So that's the master plan of it all. But
Good.
I like to build stuff. I like to experiment a lot. Like, for no reason at all, I went from Refugium, and then I built a Chaeto reactor, so that was another good DIY. Super easy to do, by the way.
Hmm.
Build a Chaeto reactor. And then I've got turf scrubber now, and like, just it makes you a more educated reefer by building, doing, or trying things. So I try everything possible.
Right.
Yep.
I can't believe your dory is bigger than your head.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
It swims by and it's like twice of your head.
I know, it's a big dory. Yeah, I know, it's fun. Yeah. All right, guys. I think I shall call her for today because it was a good one. Mark, as always, thank you for joining me. I always love our
Thanks for
random
having me
chats. Thank you. All right, guys. If you enjoyed it, as always, hit that like button. If you're new, subscribe. And if you haven't entered yet, there is an Alcatronic giveaway coming up in, what is it, 7 or 8 days until the contest is over. So make sure you enter. That video is pinned on the channel, so you can't miss it. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will catch you guys in next week's live stream.
Bye.